know, Sandy, you were saying you have to read. You do a lot of reading, right? And our young people today don't like to read. You know, they want pictures, you know, but you have to read, and you have to study and research all of the things.
Right.
Like you just gave all this litany of things that the blacks did. You had to study, you read that.
Oh, man, I had to put in a lot of time, effort, and energy to do it because it wasn't included in my current curriculum throughout the schools. It's not incorporated in any curriculum throughout the United States of America.
That's right.
And it makes you ask, why don't you include a Matthew Henson on a constant basis when you're talking about geography, or DeSable in Chicago, or why don't you include, you know, all the positive contributions from even today, Dr. Shirley Jackson, one of the most noted nuclear physicists, was a black woman.
That's right.
You know, and so we need to start promoting that so our kids can see it. A lot of our kids don't look to the people that we would look to as role models. They see these models playing roles. And what I mean by that is people playing a role. They've assimilated as opposed to accommodated, and as a result of it, somewhere along the way, I think they've lost their sense of self, and it makes it very difficult. Or they've never got the information we're talking about now, so they gravitate to what they think is knowledge, and they haven't read. Dr. Ben Yohanan, African Man in the Nile, C.A. Diop, or it's called C.A. Johas, his name, but The African Origin of Civilization, Malifa Asante, The History of African Americans, Dr. King, Why We Can't Wait. I mean, Dr. King was one of the most intelligent man, graduated high school at 15 years old.
Right.
You know, a bachelor's degree at 19 years old, a doctorate degree at 26. This man was well-versed, well-read, articulate, and was familiar with the economic system, the political system, as well as organizational information. So,
and too many of our young people don't even know about Dr. King.
Man, they think all he did was had a I Had a Dream speech.
That's it.
They don't know that, you know, when he was assassinated, he was fighting for the poor man's campaign and Memphis sanitation workers, not about trying to have integration, but so that they would be able to get equal compensation because he wanted to increase the standard of living for us as well as our self-esteem.
That's exactly right.
And I think that's what African-American history in my reading has done for me. It's increased my self-esteem and self-confidence so that when I sit down to talk with anybody, whether it's the president of the board, the president of the college or university, or you know, Highland Park or Skyland Terrace, Jackson Sherritt, Cleveland, East 55th, wherever. That's right. You know, we can talk.
That's exactly right. And you know, I can remember, well, my son was quite young, and he loved to read. I mean, he was really reading when he was like age 3, or he could really read. And he would be saying things to me. I'm like, where did you learn? Mom, I read it. Yeah. He always loved to read, and he's like you. He can just, it doesn't matter who he's with, where he can just hold a conversation because he has that knowledge. He's read all about it. And so reading, it's going to be more than 20 minutes a day. You know, it's going to take a lot of dedication. Our young people must read and educate themselves.
Well, education has basically been the salvation for me on a constant basis. I say I'm a teacher, not a preacher. My message is education, not necessarily salvation, and I leave that up to the ministers. But at the same time, education has opened up any and every door that I have today. Anything that I'm able to do today, from a car that I drive to the money that I have in my pocket to the way I'm able to take care of my family, is due to the blessings of God, most importantly. All them prayers that my grandma Womack had for me. But education, and by continuing to achieve more and more education, it opens up more and more doors for you. And I would encourage any and every student, I mean, ask the kids, how many plan on going to college? Everybody's going to probably raise their hand. I guarantee almost everybody will. When you ask them, how many of you guys plan on going to jail? You don't never get a hand raised. But my next question is, how many of you guys know somebody in jail? Almost everybody raises their hand. So in between time, in the meantime, what happened? And why do you think they ended up there? And in many cases, I think lack of educational opportunity. You know, I can name 10 friends that either incarcerated or dead, and then I can name 10 friends that are doing well. And almost everybody that I know that's doing well is either a licensed cosmetologist, a licensed carpenter, a journeyman construction worker, a licensed teacher, barber, educator, a professor. You know, they have some type of license, some form of post-secondary education in whatever field that they were in. And they're able to help their standard of living because gas, water, electric, cable, phone come every month. And when you got the least, they charge you the most.
That's right.
It costs more to get a roll of toilet paper right there on the corner in the Highland Park area than it does for me to go to Giant Eagle. I can get 4 rolls of Charmin for 99 cents. I go up to one of these little corner stores, it's $1.09 for 1 roll. So the people who got the least gets charged the most.
That's exactly right.
And we don't think about it.
It's across the board. It's everywhere. It's not just in Canton. It's all over.
All over the country.
Yes, it is. And so we have to, our young people, you must go to school. And just not high school, you must go on to college.
We need it.
You know, you can't just stop at high school. You must go on to higher education. It's just important.
When you asked the question to the students today, and I hope I'm not taking up too much of your time, thank you for the information, but I always ask my students as well, why do you think they denied access to education to the slave for over 300 years? I mean, why do you think you denied him access to education? Because he couldn't read the check, he couldn't read the book, he couldn't read the information, then he had no idea what it said. If he didn't know the power of moving the decimal 2 places and what that would do from $100,000 to moving it 2 places, now you got $1,000, then you don't know. And by denying yourself access to education, deny yourself access to income. Denying yourself access to income in the United States is very difficult because we live in a capitalistic society where education and income go hand in hand, not by accident, but by design. So I think when our people start to realize that and start to embrace education as opposed to looking at it as, you know, that's for a nerd or that's for a square, that's for, you know, that's for that bookworm, then I think we will, as a people, will be able to rise because we can read into, you know, hey, that's not necessarily true. You know, I see what they taught you in school that was on the test, but did you read these 2 other books to find out what was going on too? And then you can have intelligent conversations with other people because you do know that some of the information that you get is misinformation.
Some information is misinformation.
Yes, some of it is misinformation.
Very good quote. Sandy, where are you going now? What are you what contribution are you going to make down to help our young people? I know your wheels are spinning, and I know you see there's so much more to be done, and you're just one person, but...
Well, you know, I'm going to pray on it and get some more direction. But in the meantime, I know what we're trying to do is try to develop an academy for students so that we can get them at a young age and expose them to college, expose them to saying, please, thank you, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, pardon me, I apologize, excuse me. Those are universal words that will get you in more doors than any amount of education just because you've shown some courtesy, and try to develop leaders.
So some of what Bill Cosby said really was true.
Bill Cosby hurt a lot of people's feelings because he hit home.
Yes, he did.
You know, he hit home.
He did.
But yeah, we're trying to develop what's called a Leadership Development Academy so that we can get kids at a young age and instill in them the education, the importance of education, expose them to colleges and universities, have, you know, role models that can come in and speak, and then they can see, you know, take them to different places. This year we're taking our kids, if the board approves it, Mrs. McWayne, if you're listening, we're trying to take them to Washington, D.C., to expose them to D.C. for a few days. We've taken our kids to Pittsburgh thanks to some donations through the Minnie Hopkins Center. We've taken them to Walsh College, Central State University.
Exposure.
Right, expose them to as much as possible.
Right.
And having high expectations. I think the expectations are low. Said in 1968, the majority of the problems with poverty is that people have a feeling of hopelessness. It's not that they don't want these things, but it's a feeling of hopelessness. And because there's a feeling of hopelessness, then you saw some of the things that took place in the 60s in regards to the late 67, 68 with the riots.
That's right.
So by exposing people to education, it helps them with a lot of things later on. 3 out of 4 people that they say are incarcerated based on information I have from the Bureau of Criminal Statistics don't have a high school diploma.
That's right.
You know, if you don't have a high school diploma, then where you going to work? And you got to have a job to pay your bills unless you're rich. And
that's when
like
crime comes in.
I didn't come up rich, man. I didn't have nobody that could give me a job or help me with these type of things. So education really helped.
Well, Sandy, I tell you, our time is out, and I could just talk to you on and on because you're a wealth of knowledge. I've learned some things from you just by listening to you expound, and you have it, and that's from the reading and educating yourself in a lot of respect, too, and going that extra step, not just reading the 1 book, but reading 2 and 3 books. You're truly a role model for our young people. I appreciate you. I want you to know that you have my support in whatever you want to do. If there's anything that I can do to help you, I want to do that. I want to thank you, audience, for listening. This young man, for those of you who are praying people, keep him lifted up in prayer. I really believe in that, and we have this whole thing about praying for the schools and around the schools, so I know it was okay to say that on the air. Thank you so much for tuning in to my show, and I'll see you next time.